All right, welcome to tonight's edition of the Post-Gazette live video. We're a little bit late tonight. If you're driving around, the traffic is unbelievable getting from town to anywhere. So give yourself some extra time. I just sat in traffic for a long time. But I'm here and we're ready to go. We've got a lot to get to. Obviously, we're going to talk about the Steelers. Tonight is the college football playoffs with Penn State and Notre Dame. It's kind of interesting. A lot of people are talking about this game between Penn State and Notre Dame, and they are, trying to basically find what I would call some sort of the nostalgia factor of it. But again, I mean, I know that, Notre Dame is one of the traditional powers in college football, and Penn State and Notre Dame have a history together, but they haven't really played each other that much. And, I think because of the way that things have gone in college football, you're going to start to see a lot less of these kinds of traditional rivalries really be anything, more than just sort of a novelty kind of game. And I think the thing about it is Penn State, the other storyline, it's funny that the media kept trying to get going, but they, couldn't really get going, is this idea that it is going to be a, two black coaches coaching in the playoffs. And regardless of who wins, it'll be the first black coach that makes it to the championship game. And I've said it many times, but at this point in our society's history, I think it's kind of silly that we're still talking about stuff like that. Honestly, I mean, and especially since it is really, in many ways, I would tell you, it is just really kind of one of these things where I look at it and say, it's just sort of in dumb luck in some ways. The college football playoff is only 10 or 11 years old. And, James Franklin has had a number of opportunities maybe to get there, and he couldn't get it done for whatever reason. And there have been some other guys that have, had some opportunities. But for the most part, it's really not that old of a phenomenon. I'm talking about the college football playoff. And so, there have been guys that have had opportunities to do it. Other guys have not had opportunities to do it just because their teams weren't good enough. For a while, it was only basically 2 teams, and then it was 4 teams. Well, you know what? At the end of the day, when you only have, X amount of teams, there's just not going to be that many opportunity for teams to get, especially when, teams like Alabama and Clemson for a long time, they have done a pretty good job of taking up taking up space in the playoffs and not allowing other people in. So my point is, if you think about the number of opportunities really for teams in the playoffs, they've been very limited. I mean, Georgia has been, for the most part, a dominant team that has, been in the playoffs a bunch of times. Clemson's been in the playoffs a bunch of times. Notre Dame was, a few times in the playoffs, obviously with Brian Kelly as their coach. But when you add all that up, I mean, I just don't think it's that big of a storyline, because I really think that it's one of those situations where you have, a limited spots in the playoffs, and you've had limited spots in the playoffs. And to me, to make this or to try and make this a storyline is silly. It's just, to me, I just don't like the fact that in 2025, we're still talking about things like this, especially when I don't know that it's all that significant. I think if you look at the number of times that there have been spots in the playoffs that have been open, I don't know. I mean, have there really been that many opportunities for a lot of teams to get into the playoffs? Probably not. I mean, if you take the spots that Clemson and Alabama and Georgia have taken up over the course of time, then throw in a couple of Notre Dames, couple of Florida States, couple of Oregons, there haven't been like this, like real wide open playoff and the ability to get that, to have that happen really until this year. And even this year, let's face it, we saw, the first 8 games, you know what that showed us? That basically probably, I don't know, I'm going to probably say 7, at least 7 teams were not going to be in the discussion for a playoff because they weren't good enough to get there. So I think that it's good that Notre Dame and Penn State are going to play because, again, there is some sort of nostalgia, but I don't think it's that significant. But I will say this, I think it's really kind of ridiculous that in 2025 we're still talking about, well, this is going to be the first black coach to coach in the college football playoff championship game, because it just hasn't been that many. That's the biggest thing to me. There just haven't been that many. And there hasn't been, there's been a small amount of teams who have really, in many ways, just been the, sort of the ones that have taken up a lot of the spots. As for tonight's game, I mean, I get it. I understand why it's interesting. Penn State, it's funny. Penn State is actually an underdog in this game. I think they match up really well. Both teams have great defenses. Both teams have really, really good defenses. And I think yards are going to be tough, and I think big plays are going to be a big factor in this game, because I just don't think you're going to get, much of anything done if you try and go down the field a little bit at a time. Both of these defenses are really good. They're really good up front. They're really good in terms of how they get after the quarterback. So to me, this is going to be about big plays, either in special teams, big plays made by defenses, and even, if one of the offenses can make a couple of big plays in the passing game, I think that really sets them up for a good spot to be in a good place. So that's, to me, I'm picking Penn State to win the game. I know that they are not favored. I know that, Notre Dame, obviously, I probably shouldn't say this, but I will probably, I mean it. I think Notre Dame is probably better coached, if I'm allowed to say that. But I think, Marcus Freeman, I think, is a pretty good coach. And I think that he will probably outcoach James Franklin a little bit, because I don't know that James Franklin is the greatest coach when it comes to game day. But I do think that, they've got a better quarterback. I don't think Riley Leonard is that good and he's not that good at throwing the ball. They've got a better quarterback. And I think that one of the things that is also true about that is if you look at them, they probably have more weapons. And so, I like their ability here. I do. I like their ability to go and win this game. And I think that's going to be the most important thing about it, is making big plays. Tomorrow's game, I don't know that anybody really gives Texas that much of a chance. I do. I don't know that Texas can necessarily or will necessarily win the game, but I do. I think that when you play defense as well as Texas does, if you can make, a couple of big plays with your offense, you put yourself in the game and you give yourself a chance. So that is where I would tell you. Now, the game's always on at Archie's. Get down to Archie's. Speaking of, if you want to go to Archie's tonight, you can watch the Oilers and the Penguins. You can watch, the college football playoff. There's a lot of stuff going on down there all weekend long. It's a weekend full of football. Wild card weekend, obviously, for the NFL, college football playoffs. You've got a number of other things going on. If you're looking for a place to go, get down to Archie's. 80-cent wings, home of the 80-cent wings. Also home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. When you get down there, tell Archie that I sent you, and enjoy yourself. Now, on to let's actually get to the Penguins real quick. It's interesting. The Penguins have blown a couple of leads here in the last couple of days. I'm looking at where they're at in the standings. And the thing about it is, if you look at where the Penguins are at in the standings right now, they're right sort of in the thick of the wild card race, with one caveat, and that is they've played a lot more games than a lot of the teams that they're battling with. So, for instance, right now they are 42 points. They're the first team out of the playoffs. Well, the Senators have 41 points, and they've played 3 less games than the Penguins. The Canadians have played 2 less games than the Penguins. The Red Wings have played 2 less games than the Penguins. The Lightning, who are actually 2 points ahead of the Penguins, have played 4 less games than the Penguins. And so even Columbus, who's tied with the Penguins, they have played 1. So basically we need to see how they, if they can continue to move forward the way they do, but they've got to start, getting the 2 points and not just the 1 point. It's good to get 1 point against Florida and Carolina. They're good teams. They're teams that you're battling with. They're teams that, you can say to yourself, well, we kind of stole a point here or a point there. By the same token, you got to start grabbing 2 points at some point. Because if you fall behind, one of the toughest things about falling behind in the standings is that basically the loser's point that other teams are getting makes it tough to catch up. And that's what I would tell you. It's really important to see that. That's where they have to go. And I think that so to me, the Penguins need to start grabbing 2 points at a time. Hopefully they can get to a point where they're making other teams sort of have to, stay ahead of them or whatever. I think that's going to be an important thing over these next 3 or 4 weeks, because now that the calendar's changed to January, it's still lots of time and there's still a lot of hockey to be played. So that's not at all what I'm saying. But what I am saying is when you get to a point where you fall behind in the standings, it can become a problem. It really can. And I think that you want to make sure that you are able to go out and get, and every point really matters. And that's what I would tell you. Every single point matters, and they need to go get the 2 points when they have a chance to get them. Tonight they play Edmonton. It's kind of funny. The Oilers are a team that need to figure out how to win a Stanley Cup while they have, Connor McDavid still in his prime. And I don't know that they're going to. He's the kind of guy that probably needs to win at least once, if not twice, to really cement his legacy. So it's cool to watch him and Crosby play because, obviously he's Crosby, 7, 8, 9 years ago, whatever it is. But Crosby can still play at a really high level, even at his age. So should be an interesting game tonight with the Oilers. I would assume it's going to be entertaining. Now on to the NFL and the Steelers. A little bit of news today. If you're looking for some news from the Steelers, Mason McCormick still hasn't been able to practice. And, I think he's a big, big part of what they do on their offensive line. He's obviously a rookie, but I think he's been a really good player for them. And so if he cannot go, I think that's a big blow for the Steelers. I think it hurts their offensive line. I'm not saying they can't overcome it, but I am saying that if he cannot play, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for them to do what they want to do on offense. And I think that's going to be the important thing. It's so important when it comes to the Steelers and sort of the continuity on the offensive line that you're looking for. I think that's going to be the important thing in my mind is, okay, let's go get the continuity that you didn't have before. And, they were starting to get it because they had basically the same exact offensive line lineup basically for 7, 8, 9 weeks in a row. And I think that's going to be, a good thing. That's been a good thing going forward. I think you've got to feel good about the offensive line, outside of the tackles going forward beyond this year. But I just don't know that if you can't get Mason McCormick all the way healthy or at least to a place where he can actually play and help you, that's a big blow. Now, on the other hand, they got some help from the other side when it was announced that Zay Flowers can't play on Saturday. Zay Flowers, obviously the receiver for the Ravens, is out. And I think that changes some things for the Steelers. I think it changes some of the math for the Steelers. They don't have to account for Zay Flowers. I mean, he's a big play guy for the Ravens. He's a big part of their offense. And he's somebody that stretches the field. He's got speed. He's hard to cover. You take him out of the equation, they're a lot less dangerous. And so I think that that's going to be something that really helps the Steelers in many, many ways, because he's a guy who can do some things that maybe some of these other guys cannot do. And I think that's the key here to understand, is they've got guys that can do things, like or they've got a guy like Zay Flowers is out. He can do a lot of things that, a lot of other guys cannot do. He stretches the field for the Ravens. He makes it really difficult to make sure that you can defend the Ravens. He's a guy who does so many good things for the Steelers. For the Ravens, that him being out is actually probably going to help the Steelers. I think that's the biggest thing, when it comes to the news of the day. The two things that jumped off the page to me, one of them is the fact that Zay Flowers is out. The other is that Mason McCormick might been out. And so that's where I come out and I say basically that, the Steelers probably would take that trade, I think. You guys hold Zay Flowers out, and if you do that, we will hold Mason McCormick out. I think that probably it's a net positive for the Steelers, but I don't think not having Mason McCormick, I don't think that's not, that's a significant development for sure. And I think that's going to be the thing about, this Steelers team on Saturdays. They've got to figure out a way to sort of put it all together. And do so without, I'm talking about their offensive line, and do so without one of the guys who's really sort of settled in and become one of their more consistent performers. I think that's the key to me in this game. Now, one of the things that a number of people have asked, and I think it's a very fair question, and the question is, when you look at the Steelers, should they use Justin Fields a lot in this tournament? In this game especially, right? And it's just going to be a situation of where I just look at it and say, Justin Fields is a guy who's a weapon. So use him when you can. Use him as much as you can. Use him in a way that basically, if you're going to get first downs out of him, if you're going to get, whatever, use him in that way. Because to me, I think he's somebody who can help you win the game. And at this point, it's important to win the game. That's the only thing that matters. Style points don't matter. How much you win by doesn't matter. How you do it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is winning the game. And I think Justin Fields, you can put a couple little packages in where you can take advantage of his ability to run and to make plays with his legs, right? You can make, the Ravens have to worry about him in short yardage. A great example was the Bengals game, if you remember the Bengals game, where we were looking at the Bengals game, and I said I didn't understand why, when they decided right before the half, they decided they were going to go for it on third down, and then again on fourth down. It was like 4th and 1, 4th and short, whatever it was. What happened? I don't, why would you not use Justin Fields there? On third down, they decided to do a quarterback sneak with Russell Wilson, who's 5'11". And of course, he didn't make it. And then on fourth down, they went with Jaylen Warren, who I think Jaylen Warren's a guy who probably should have made that. But at the end of the day, you make yourself a whole lot harder to defend in short yardage if you have a guy like Justin Fields who can tuck it and run, if you can do some read option stuff, if you can do different things to try and make it so that Justin Fields is somebody that the Bengals would have had to account for on those plays. So I think that really we should see some Justin Fields this weekend. Now, I'm not one of these people who thinks that Justin Fields is better than Russell Wilson or that, you should give a heavy dose of it. But to me, it only seems to make sense. It only seems to make sense if you have Justin Fields on your team to use him and use his talents to help you win a football game. Like, that's not a concept that I don't think that's that controversial, is it? You've got Justin Fields. You've got his legs. You've got his ability to make plays. And I'll tell you the other thing I like about Justin Fields that I'm, not as high on Russell Wilson about. I think Justin Fields has got a little dog in him. I think he's a winner. He's a fighter. And I think he's the kind of guy that probably doesn't want to he's not going to leave it out on the field, so to speak. He's not. He's a guy that probably in so many ways is going to be fighting for every inch of every time he takes the field. And that's the kind of guy you want sort of leading the way. That's all I'll say about it. I mean, I think he's a guy that probably you'll want to do that. So I think that you don't want to leave Justin Fields sitting on the sidelines. I just think that that's crazy. I think that you would basically be not giving yourself the best chance to win. And again, I think that Russell Wilson should play. I think he should start. I think he should play almost all the snaps. But there are some opportunities probably where you will be able to go and perhaps use Justin Fields in certain situations. And I think that's the key. And the other part of it is and this is kind of an interesting discussion philosophically, but if Justin Fields, if the Steelers lose this game, here's what I want you to think about. If they lose this game, have they wasted Justin Fields for a year? Because it feels like we don't know that much more about Justin Fields now than we did at the beginning of the year. I mean, he won a few games for them, and that was great, but do we really kind of know how good he can be? Have we really watched him grow up? Have we really watched him, develop as a quarterback? And I ask you this, if they win on Saturday, then obviously it was all worth it. But if they don't win on Saturday, and you could go back to the start of the season, and I told you, listen, you're not going to win a playoff game. Would you be okay with, hey, Justin Fields is going to play every snap for the entire season? He's our guy. And at the end of the year, we're going to figure out if we've got a quarterback of the future or if we've got a guy who's just not that good. But nevertheless, the Steelers really didn't figure that out this year. They had no idea this year how good he is or how good he could be or whatever. And that to me is a problem. It feels like they've wasted time with Justin Fields. So that's that situation. Russell Wilson, on the other hand, I've had people ask me, do I think he's playing for a job? I just don't know. I mean, it sure feels like the Steelers kind of like him, but by the same token, if he don't win a playoff game and he doesn't play very well, he hasn't played, great over the last 4 weeks, are they really going to lock him up for, 2 or 3 more years? I don't know. Part of me thinks that the quarterback situation for next year is going to be the same. Russell Wilson, Justin Fields. They've done that before in the past. So I don't know why you'd be surprised if they tried to do that again, where they bring them both back and have them and have them compete again next year. But again, I don't know you're going to be able to sign Justin Fields unless you give him the opportunity to go compete. That's what you need. And I think that's going to be the most important thing is, with respect to the Steelers, is figuring out their quarterback situation. But before they do that, they are absolutely going to basically have to figure out what they're doing with respect to Russell Wilson. And again, they would get started this weekend if they lose. Now, I think I've been hinting about this all week. I don't necessarily know they're definitely going to lose. Some people seem to think they know they're definitely going to lose. We'll see. We'll see. I certainly like the 9.5 points. I don't know about you, but that seems like way too much for this kind of game. 9.5 points is too much. It just is. And so I would say that only to say that, you know what, I'd be very, very careful picking against the Steelers. These games are usually close. Both of these coaches are similar in how, conservative they are. I'll tell you one thing that Lamar Jackson did better in the last game they played against the Steelers. He did a little bit more read option stuff where he actually tucked the ball and ran. And I think that kind of kept the Steelers off balance a little bit. I think that's where we're at with it. He was just a little bit, he kept them a little bit off balance by handing them the ball and bringing it back and running. So to me, that's one thing the Steelers will have to figure out. But I actually am not in the camp where I believe that the Steelers have no shot, because I think they have a shot. I think they can win. I think it'll be a close game. I think they'll have a chance in the fourth quarter to win this game. I do. Now, will they? I don't know. I mean, obviously, if I knew that, I would go to Vegas. I would take the plus 400 or whatever it is, and I would run with it. But I do know, if we're going to talk about what are you going to do, which way are you going to bet? And tomorrow I'll give you my prediction for the game. But which way I'm going to bet, I can tell you this much. I'm taking 9.5 points. And I think if you look at the Steelers' history and, the Steelers' Ravens history and all that other stuff, of course, someone pointed this out today, and it's true. The last time the Steelers and the Ravens met in the playoffs, the Ravens won by 14 points. But that's a different story for a different day. Or 13. 14 was it 30-17 or 31-17, something like that. Nevertheless, I think that there's a lot of narrative about the Ravens, being unbeatable. And, if you look, there's a lot of metrics that they love. People love the Ravens. The metrics love the Ravens, everything. But they've got to get a lot of things. They've got to exercise a lot of demons too. They really do. And so I think that is going to be an interesting game from the standpoint of the Steelers and the Ravens always play a tough, hard-fought, tight game. And I think that this is going to be no different. I think when you look at the totality of the game, you know what? When you get in the playoffs, teams get a little bit tighter. Teams get a little bit more pressure. They don't make some of the plays they make routinely in the regular season. I mean, it can be very, very difficult. So I would tell you, when you look at the Steelers, there's no reason to have on Monday, if they lose, we can have the conversation about Mike Tomlin and all that other stuff. There's no reason to have it right now because they haven't lost. And there's a chance they could win. I don't know what winning would mean other than they get to go to Kansas City probably, and, we'll see what happens. But to me, I look at it from the standpoint of, this is a situation where the Steelers can play a little looser than the Ravens. I think there's a lot of pressure on the Ravens. I mean, you've got Lamar Jackson, you've got MVP talk, you've got all this other stuff, man. It can be very, very difficult if you don't start winning a lot and winning at a high level. So, I'll give my official predictions tomorrow, we'll look around the NFL tomorrow. I'll be a little bit more specific on what I think is going to happen. But I'm going to tell you today, just for today, I like the 9.5. Just like I like the Penn State tonight +2. I like the 9.5 for the Steelers. Any rate, tomorrow we'll do it at 5. We'll fire it out. We'll get it going. We'll talk about the Steelers and the Ravens. We'll have the final verdict on a couple of these injured guys, and we will break down Wild Card Weekend and also break down Penn State Notre Dame from tonight. We'll do all that tomorrow. So we will talk until such time. Have a good day, and thank you for listening and tuning in and all that other good stuff. Tell your friends about it.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.